Perfect, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the keynote on day one of, or the keynote panel on day one of Capacity Europe. Quite an exciting format this morning. As you can see on the screen behind me, we've brought together 7 of the leaders of this industry. And it's sort of quite an unprecedented size of panel, as you can see from the number of chairs that we have set out to the front. And what we've asked them to do is we've asked them each to come up here one by one and pitch really for 5 minutes what they believe is the biggest trend in innovation that they're seeing from their perspective in their organization. And I can tell you, I won't do any spoilers, but we have a really interesting range of topics this morning that, at least personally, they put me towards the optimistic end of the spectrum for the future of the industry. Once we've done that, we'll all stay on the stage and we'll start to have a discussion around some of the other areas beyond what they see as the trends and innovations. So the impacts of hyperscalers, really building a scalable model to monetize 5G, and how do you create value above the network, beyond just the pipes itself. So without any further ado, let me introduce the first speaker. I'll introduce them up on the stage. When they've finished, they'll take a seat and we'll gradually fill the stage. This lady is the Chief Commercial Officer of COLT. It is Keri Gilder. If you can please join me in welcoming Keri to the stage. Thank you.
Is the clicker working?
Should be.
Okay. Good morning. My name's Keri Gilder, and I am the Chief Commercial Officer for COLT. I wanted to start out with the literal definition of network, which is a group or system of interconnected people or things. The network of tomorrow is both. It's a strong ecosystem of people and companies that are coming together to deliver an interconnected system of things. In our world, it's called the Internet of Things. According to the GSMA, the Internet of Things will contain more than 25 billion devices by 2025. Cisco states that by 2022, which is only 2 years from now, IP traffic will be more than 5 zettabytes per year. This means that today's network must be built to deliver applications and services that didn't exist 10 years ago, and in most cases don't exist today. The network must be agile in how it delivers this service, but it also must be agile in when the service is delivered. The network must also be smart, but yet simple. It must be smart in how it provides insights and enables the individual customer to live and work in the way they want to. It must be very simple in how it interacts with the growing ecosystem. This interaction will be critical for the future success of our industry. If you look up at the slide behind me, you can see a snapshot that paints a picture of the many companies, the many people, and the many things that we must interact with in order to provide that service and application to our end user. With AI, blockchain, and 5G, that interconnection and that cog, so to say, is expanding, and it's becoming more and more complex. It's no longer enough to just provide connectivity. The network of tomorrow means that our customers need us to work hand in hand with a growing range of partners and a growing range of suppliers. Data centers, cloud providers, content providers, systems integrators. If we look at 5G as an example, we are no longer just working with the mobile operator. We're working with building landlords, we're working with street furniture companies, we're working with local councils and authorities, we're working with edge data center companies. and many, many others as industrial spectrum starts coming to the forefront. The 5G opportunity is significant. It will provide quicker data speeds, and it will enable brand new applications that simply wouldn't be possible on the existing mobile networks. A couple of the use cases are behind me. Enhanced mobile broadband. This is going to provide very high data rates and provide extreme coverage. And that's great news for our content and our gaming providers. But it's very difficult for our operators, as it requires mass deployment of small cells and a very different business case for backhaul in order to enable a positive return on investment. Low latency communications, they're perfect for real-time AR and VR and also for connected cars. A use case that will add more and more data to our networks, but will require that data processing at the very edge, as close to that end user as possible. Machine-to-machine type communications, perfect for industrial applications, and also IoT. This will require us to drive significant amounts of data and then be able to process that in real time. We will have to ensure that we can connect millions of devices around the world to gather that data in real time, and that not only gather it, but analyze it, interpret it, and feed it back to the end user almost immediately. Each of these use cases are very different in the way they transmit the data and the processing of that required data. A change in our networks is required to support them. That change means helping our customers build networks that can handle that large growth in data, but also provide a secure connection at the edge for the compute. This is just one example. If I brought up IoT, there are many, many other examples that paint an even bigger picture with a much bigger ecosystem. That's why the network of tomorrow needs to enable all of the players in the ecosystem to make connectivity as seamless as possible. It is also why that we at COLT are continuing to build our networks to reach out to the different locations and data centers to support the Internet of Things. A network that is both smart and simple when it comes to engaging with the end customer and also the full ecosystem. Our partners will provide things that we can see and things that we can dream up tomorrow. Thank you.
Keri, thank you very much. If you'd like to take a seat. I think that was a very relevant start, given the number of you that said that 5G is going to be one of the most transformative elements going forward. Next, I'd like to invite to the stage the CCO of Telefónica International Wholesale Services to share his view of what is important going forward. Please join me in welcoming Juan Carlos Bernal.
Hello, good morning. When we talk about innovation, usually we talk about technology, we talk about systems, we talk about new services. But what I would like to share with you is what we understand, in Telefónica, about innovation in the customer engagement models that we use to have, in the wholesale business. I think that our market, the wholesale market, is changing, and it's affording different opportunities and different challenges, and we need to evolve in the way that we serve and we attend the customers that we have. The first thing is that we think that we have to adapt. We have to be very proactive, adapting the customer's requirements. We have today, we don't have only the traditional customers like the fixed or mobile operators. We have a set of different customers like OTTs, cloud companies, integrators, aggregators, platform-based companies that are requiring us the wholesale services. Then the customers and the type of customers and the nature of these customers has changed dramatically from the beginning. This is a challenge for us. We need to adapt ourselves, to these new customers. We need to introduce new technologies in our services. We need to develop and be very proactive, developing dynamic services, developing bandwidth on-demand services, easy to buy and easy to get, from these new customers. And in some cases, even we have to evolve our business model to work jointly with these new companies to afford the market that they are affording right now. If we look at these services, in the service side, we need also a transformation. We need an innovation in generate and develop very proactively end-to-end services. I think that the wholesale is not more something that is different from the retail. We have to observe the retail market. We have to understand what the retail customers are requiring, because this is the type of services that we are going to provide to our operators and our customers. This is the case, for instance, in our case on the roaming side. Traditionally the roaming was a pure wholesale business, interchange traffic, interchange minutes or volumes. But if we look at the roaming and the needs of the new operators, we have to observe what are the real needs these carriers have. For instance, in Telefónica, we have developing a service that is called Marketing Campaign Manager, where we have the ability to send tariff packages to the roamers, to identify the silent roamers. This is the real need on the carrier. Then we have to go and step forward on the service development. This is the same case on the RCS, for instance. The messaging is not more an interchange on volumes, is something that we have to understand the needs of the end customer to serve better to our wholesale customers. Additionally, these new customers, these new companies that are in the market, in the wholesale market, require a transformation in the way that we interact with them. We have to be prepared to offer real-time services, to use digital tools, to serve these customers, to be very quick in the provisioning times, to be very open, showing these customers in real time and using dynamic tools, where the e-services are, when we are going to provision, what is the invoice or the billing that they are going to receive. Then we have to invest, in portals, in digital marketing tools for these new customers, because the behavior on that is not the same that we were used to attend. And words like APIs or system integrations or real-time or automation, becomes, needs, to attend and to serve these new customers that are in the space. But to do that, to afford this transformation, probably the first step is to look at our back office. Our back office, I think that is the foundation where we have to be sure that we are going to serve these customers. We need to transform our back office in automation, in softwareization, in virtualization, because this back office is not even more a back office, it's going to be a front office. This is something that we are going to show to our customers, to show our this new company, not only the new, but also the traditional ones. Then I think that the initial on this transformation should come from the back office. We have to evolve our network to a software-based network. In fact, in Telefónica, we have conduct, a very, very disruptive transformation in the last 2 years, on the transformation on the network. Most of our network is softwareized. We are developing services that are software-based. We are transforming even the staff, the staff that we have. Now we are hiring people that is base that has, software skills, is not so relevant in network skills, that we have in the past. Now I think that we need a different type of talent, a different type of people. And the only purpose is to serve the customers and to serve the ecosystem that now is changing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Fantastic there to hear the Telefonica view, and building on what we saw in the survey about 15 minutes ago, automation front and center of the transformation that Juan Carlos is leading in Telefonica. I'd now like to invite to the stage the CEO of TI Sparkle to give his view on where things are going. Please join me in welcoming Mario de Mauro.
Thank you, Sam. Good morning to everyone. Thank you, Sam. And well, I can give you a bit of our experience in Sparkle, but also you were referring to the 5G and to be optimistic. Last year, I was in charge before Sparkle of coordinating the 5G project in my company, so that's what I did as Chief Innovation of TI Group, and I had to convince the board of directors to spend 2.4 billion euro in acquiring the licenses, and I went 5 times to the board of directors explaining why this is a particular moment in time, a good moment in time, a moment to be optimistic on our industry, on our future. Well, luckily I've been able to convince them. Unfortunately, we spent 2.4 billion, and Italy is not a best case for reference on 5G, since as an industry we spent 6.5 billion euro on that. But this should give us clearly also the responsibility and the commitment to move quick, move fast, and really take this opportunity, because it's a new cycle that we are igniting as an industry of telcos, and a new cycle which will be completely different from the one that we witnessed so far. More security, more attention to what is the content of the applications, enterprises, institutions, cybersecurity. So all of this means, on one side, a big opportunity to capture. We are not only talking about consumer things. Now, more and more things that require reliance, latency, require robust solution, and require trust and credibility on the side of who is offering these services. So surely we need to be optimistic, but being optimistic means that we need to start from reality, and we need to start from where facts and figures are. So clearly the situation of our industry is different around the world. In Western Europe, if you talk with other players, if you talk at industry levels inside industry bodies, we need to clearly take into account that most of the players, I'm not telling all the players, most of the players in the industry, the telco players, are actually destroying value. This is technically what is happening if your return on investment is not capable, is not enough to cover your cost of capital. And so you have to work on what is behind the capital investment. We use too much capital as telco, we are too much capital intensive, we know very well this, and for sure, in order to allow new growth, we need to be brave enough, bold enough to take this new growth opportunity, select the growth opportunities, for sure. And you heard, Juan Carlos, you heard, and you will hear other talking about the need of automate our network and the need to introduce digital capabilities, for sure. So I would like to drive your attention on, not on the infrastructure, on the network assets, but on the most important asset that we have, which is people. This is the most important asset that we have in our companies. And you know, we absolutely need to capture growth. We need to relaunch our value creation. Otherwise, there is no meaning in what we do, at least in Western Europe. Well, this means that the new business model needs to rely on the digital enablers, okay? So today we are talking about automation, blockchain, IoT. I'm talking about big data analytics, but it's just a piece of a complex puzzle that we need to consider inner part of our business starting from today, starting from yesterday. And this is important because it's what transformation is made of, it's what innovation is made of. Otherwise, you are out of the market. We cannot really compete or even create value for our customers in a niche. Could it be secure connectivity or other digital solution around content, around IoT, as you mentioned before. But one important thing, I mentioned the asset of people. We always refer to an important transformation, and we all know that transformation means that people need to be heavily engaged and people need to change their behavior. So the need to introduce these digital enablers, it's a new way of working, changing from reactive to proactive, and people feels more and more engaged in our company if, sorry, I do not want to offend anyone, instead of working on voice, on exchanging, reselling voice, people is actually working on those digital enablers, working with the ecosystem. Why for them? The why for them, the reason for them is to acquire new skills, new capabilities, really have a professional, a leadership which is future-proof. This is important. Otherwise, each time we make the engagement survey, we really risk to find people strongly disengaged. Because why we are not able to really update the business model, and people see no value and interest in what we are doing. So I'm telling you this because the great portion of our time as key managers in Sparkle is really devoted to people, listening to people, providing for leadership development programs, and all it is needed to go through this important transformation. So this was an important key message I wanted to share with you because really we are devoting most of the time on this. Second point, big data analytics, sure, are part of this puzzle, and we need to be, I think, at least we are in Sparkle, clearly focused. We need to simplify things, so it's not time to introduce an enormous project, big competence center on big data. We need to define those use cases that are relevant to the customer and are relevant to our internal process. So a simple customer journey, simple targets, objectives. We want to reduce time to money. Well, okay, we measure ourselves, otherwise anything else is just words. So we are actively using big data to try and reduce the time to delivery of our services. This could be activation of links, activation of cloud services. And we measure ourselves on really few relevant KPIs for the customers. We apply big data. As you can see, we try to gather the information from all our systems. And you cannot work without big data analytics because traffic, as you know, it's growing at a sustained double digit on our network on a day-to-day basis. Applications run on a real time, so that's what you need to do. We have one customer view. So all our sales people, but not only customer relationship management, need to work having a one customer view, so applications really retrieve data from all the systems, internal but also external systems. So this is a complicated picture to tell you that more and more we do the transformation and innovation, not only defining big data in terms of what do we want to do, governance, and few specific use cases relevant to the customer, but also having a link with external partners, as everyone is doing nowadays. But also in that case, it's the logic of innovation, of partnering for instance, I'm referring here to a couple of use cases that we provide to an important energy utility in Italy and to an automated port. We defined with the partner a couple of big data use cases to let them better manage the logistic of a port, or in the other case, to optimize their cost. So at the end of the day, nothing special, unless then bringing these new capabilities, working on them right now, because it's the best way to engage your people with a strong proposition for them, and really be focused, be simple, because the future is exactly around at least, as we see in Sparkle, secure connectivity, few important digital solutions around IoT that more and more will acquire importance in a world where threats arise from everywhere, and the need of resilience and of secure connectivity, it's sure the right way for telcos to keep being optimistic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Mario there, explaining how people are very much at the core. Your teams are at the core of this organizational industry transformation. So let's move on now, maybe go slightly across the border from Italy into France. And let's hear the view from Orange International Carriers. I'd like to invite to the stage their CEO, Emmanuel Rochas.
Well, there are many ways to attack an organization. DDoS, phishing, viruses, ransomware, range hijacking, SQL injection, DNS tunneling, botnets, spoofing, SIM boxes. So you all know all these words. But are you afraid of them? You should be. In 2018, ransomware impact was over $8 billion worldwide. In 2018, the biggest DDoS attack reached up to 1.7 terabytes per second, which is like 500 hours of HD video every second. DDoS attacks have multiplied by 3 between 2018 and 2019, accelerating year after year. You don't need to go to the dark web to learn how to do that. You just need to go to a public search engine. And if you type how to do a DNS tunneling attack, you will find 15.5 million results. How to do a phishing attack, 9.2 million results. And most of these pages are basically tutorials, step-by-step tutorials to know how to do it. And you can even find very nice videos to explain you what to do. These threats have been here for a number of years. And in 2012 already, Robert Mueller, FBI director, said there are only two types of companies, those who have been hacked and those who will be. This was true in 2012. It is still in 2019. But what is worrying is that not everybody understands yet that even a huge company can be brought to their knees by one of these attacks. Let me take one example, one famous example. You all know about Marriott Hotels. In November 2018, Marriott International stated that cyber thieves have stolen data concerning 500 million customers, including passport details, including credit card numbers for more than 100 million customers. This breach was running for more than 5 years. The company has incurred $28 million costs to solve the problem. So security is vital for every company, and I'm convinced that carriers have both the skill and the legitimacy to play a role in protecting our customers from those threats. I would like to illustrate with one other example of cyber threats, which is fraud. What you see here is an SMS, which is transformed and that you can receive. This SMS, of course, is really difficult to read and is ultimately damaging the brand of both the sender and the retail operator delivering it. And in addition, this transformed SMS is very hard to block for firewalls, in particular when they go through a bypassing international termination. And this type of bypass is really, really massive. For one of our customers, MNO customers in Africa, we have measured that 44% of their international messaging traffic was bypassed. And through implementing a firewall solution, we've blocked all those messages and forced them to go through legitimate routes, enabling our customer to monetize 25 million additional international SMS. Helping our customers to protect from fraud and from cyber threats is beneficial for all the chain, from the content sender to the end customer. But it requires from us to be as agile, as innovative, and as fast as the fraudsters. The 2019 report from the GLF on fraud is showing that there are new trends and new technologies that are going to possibly accelerate fraud. In particular, the 5G and IoT's future scale are going to increase the vulnerability in the networks. Digitization of the traffic opens the door to traditional internet-based hackers. So to be ready to face those new threats, we have to continue transforming and adopting new tools. Automation, big data, blockchain, machine learning are all very important opportunities for us to better fight against those threats and fraud. But we need to be ready. What we decided at Orange is to pool our efforts on this domain, security and fraud and anti-fraud, with our affiliate company, Orange Cyber Defense, which is a European leader in terms of cyber defense and cyber security, with a pool of 2,000 experts and 4,000 customers. And with this internal partnership, we're able to propose to our customer a full portfolio of state-of-the-art cyber defense solutions, because cybersecurity is a must-have for our customers, and what we want to do is to help them secure the network and the traffics. Thank you.
Emmanuel, thank you very much. I think a very nice counterbalance to some of the opportunities we're hearing in the industry today, also the challenges that come to carriers, to yourselves, in order to ensure that we can safely deliver traffic amongst these new threats. Now let's continue our tour across Europe. We've been up through Italy. We've now come up through France. We're going to cross the border over into Germany. And we're going to hear from the SVP of Deutsche Telekom, global carrier, on what he feels is one of the biggest trends and innovations in the industry. So I'd like you to join me in welcoming Rolf Nafziger to the stage.
Yeah, I have been asked to talk about blockchain, and obviously I'm not a blockchain expert. And probably there are two reasons why I'm here talking about that. The first one, I think for a blockchain expert, it would be tough to talk about this topic only in 5 minutes. And the second reason is I'm a very big supporter of blockchain in this community. And the reason behind that is that if you look into the blockchain topic, there was a huge hype around that, and this hype obviously has been blown away. But this does not mean that also the trend of blockchain is over. And if you look into the remaining business models of blockchain, obviously there's a huge chance around blockchain for our industry. Blockchain is very much about creating trust in an industry. It's about having really undisputed reality in one blockchain, information that is not getting lost, information that is distributed across different nodes. So from the architecture and the first view, it's obvious that in our industry, the inter-carrier industry, there might be huge benefit when we talk about blockchain, and we support that. When we look into the press, you will find many releases that are now showing that blockchain is embraced from more and more carriers. There are multiple reasons for that. It's of course, if you look into our industry, the biggest challenge we have all is, of course, to deal with complexity, to deal with higher requests for services, to have higher need for efficiencies. So automation needs to come, and we need tools to automate. And most of our initiatives, of course, within our own footprint, within our own company. But the very big success will also come by linking our community, by cooperation, and by creating more trust here. And therefore, we see with blockchain big advantages on cost, on efficiency, on fraud, which is still a big topic, and we discussed this yesterday in the GLF, in the Global Leadership Forum. We are making progress on fraud, but there will be new fraud models coming up also in the environment of IoT. So fraud management via blockchain might be a big advantage. And of course, also if we create higher customer satisfaction also on the revenue side. But of course, with blockchain, there are also coming a lot of challenges along. And the biggest one, of course, is scalability. In our industry, we have sometimes thousands of transactions per second. If you think about roaming, yeah, it's rather complex, and there are a lot of transactions every minute, every second. So blockchain needs to get ready and scale up to these purposes. Also, blockchain, of course, needs to be implemented in our IT. And I don't know about your company, but at Deutsche Telekom, we have, of course, a lot of legacy IT systems that we need to optimize and then also implement blockchain on top. In addition, of course, we have to look into privacy. A lot of information on blockchain is, of course, shared. So there are a lot of challenges that we need to embrace to make blockchain a success. If you now ask me what is our approach at Deutsche Telekom for blockchain, we have created a couple of proof of concepts. So we are looking into blockchain in the environment of international voice. We have already run the first proof of concept in the environment of roaming. And we think that also for blockchain, there is a very good use case in the area of data on demand. So in all these areas, if you think about the whole chain of quoting, of in the end delivering, of managing everything, about settlement and also billing, all this process in the end might be handled fully automated by blockchain. But also coming from the carrier perspective and our own POCs, it's not so difficult to create an own POC within your company. But we all should be aware blockchain is in the end a network effect good. This means you only have a benefit for yourself if others are implementing this as well. And this is the biggest challenge we have in our industry. Yeah, we all need to embrace this topic. And therefore, I'm extremely happy that there's an initiative in the GLF, by the way, under the lead of COLT, yeah, driving this topic forward, creating the so-called CBN, the Carrier Blockchain Network. And you see it here on the left side of the chart, what we are doing there in this kind of alliance is we are developing technical and commercial architecture. We are also leveraging the blockchain architecture. We are looking into vendor selection. So overall, this is an ideal platform now, a federation where not one or two carriers are implementing blockchain, but we are doing this across the industry, across very big players, so that we are creating in the end a lot of gravity that other carriers are going to join us. So I think blockchain is more than a trend, it's a necessity, and I hope that many of you are supporting this topic also in our carrier industry. Thank you.
Rolf, thank you very much. If anybody here has not yet had a chance to look at the work of the CBN, I would really encourage you to do so. There's already 11 carriers signed up working together to develop this network with engagement of, I believe it's 10 vendors already coming together to build the underlying technology architecture. So it's something that's moving quickly and at scale with many of the organizations who are part of this session. So I really recommend you do that. Now let's continue on as we go on our tour of the world. We're going to leave Europe and we're going to come over to the UK. Maybe not the best. We're just going to come to the UK. We're not going to leave. We're going to come to the UK. Sorry. Wrong timing. Sorry, got that. So, in the UK, we're going to hear from the work of BT and what BT thinks is important. This is BT as a global telecoms organization. So I'd like to invite to the stage the VP of Telecommunications, Dave Disley.
Good morning, everyone. I always get jealous of Ralph's pink sneakers, so you're going to have to make do with BT Indigo now, the new brand colouring. I'm going to move straight. I've only got one slide. I think you'll have heard a common theme, though, from everyone here that there's a huge amount of change in the industry. And many of the things that have been talked about can't be delivered alone. So a big part of what I'm going to be making today is a plea for us to continue to change the way that we evolve, in the way that we collaborate. And we're not terrible at this, but I think the reality is, we need to remove the barriers of today if we're going to unlock the potential of technology of the future. If you think about collaboration in this industry, I mean, we've been doing this since the first days of international communications. You could argue the first transatlantic telephone call 100 years ago between AT&T and what's now BT. And we actually managed to work in what's a very complicated environment. There's very few other industries where you sit in the same meeting room and you wear a hat that 1 minute you're the customer, the next minute you're the supplier. Maybe you're a partner or a strategic technology partner. Maybe you're a part shareholder. And usually you're a competitor as well. And sometimes that shapes the way we work together. I think the reality, though, is that the way we collaborate has been shaped in the past. It's been shaped in a different era. It was shaped in a time when technology life cycles were very different. We could afford to take a few years developing a standard, then a few years bringing a product to market, then a few more years getting it to work between multiple carriers on the international stage. And that worked when the technology, something like MPLS, has been around for 20 years. But we're in a different world now, a very different world. We're in a world of software-defined networks in terms of the underlay. We're in a different world in terms of software-defined overlay networks. Agile working. We're less about big product launches and more about feature launches. Our expectation of the speed of technology change is driven by consumerization. So the way we work today has to be a lot faster than the way we worked in the past. I think also our collaboration has been focused very much on the days when you could quite clearly define what the carrier and telco industry was. You could look around and say, that looks like a carrier, that looks like a data center provider, that looks like a corporate applications provider. Those days have gone. You only have to look at any of these events now to see the attendees include the hyperscale players, the over-the-top players. And if we don't change our ways of collaborating to incorporate and embrace those players, we're missing a huge opportunity to support them and to bring them into that discussion about what's required to make this industry a success as we go forward. I think they're also shaped in an era when the asset was the competitive advantage. All the capital that we had went into building networks and building bigger and better networks. And the way we differentiated was around who had the biggest network, who had the most amount of POPs on their network. And certainly in our view, that's not going to be the differentiator in the future. It's going to be a part of the competitive advantage, but we think the real competitive advantage is in enabling a fantastic customer experience. It's in the way that you orchestrate and bring together solutions that allow customers to connect the applications they want, which may or may not be provided by us, with the cloud services they require, which again may or may not be provided by us, and the underlying network infrastructure, the most appropriate network to transport that, which again may or may not be provided by us. And that changes the dynamic in the way that we need to collaborate. So to try and summarize, I guess my position is that what we have today sort of works. It gets us by. But if we're going to unlock the potential of the industry going forward, if we're going to deliver some of the great things that people have talked about here, we're fundamentally going to have to change the way and the pace that we collaborate together as an industry. Thanks.
Dave, thank you very much. I think that brings together a lot of the strands of that transformation the industry is going through, who we work with, and the uniqueness of this industry where in this room we have people who are customers, partners, suppliers, competitors, all of the same. Now we've got one more speaker for this morning before we get into the panel discussion, and it's definitely not, we have saved the least till last. I'd like to invite one of the leaders of one of the leading wholesalers to the stage to give his view on what is really important for this industry going forward. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to the President of Verizon Partner Solutions, Mr. Eric Cevis.
Thank you so much, Sam. Really appreciate it. So an interesting opportunity because the Verizon Telecom guy and technology guy is going to talk to you about a different topic. But the importance of the topic as it relates to digital transformation and the digital economy. Because clearly the digital economy is the economy. And what do we do as service providers and carriers on a global stage to make certain that we leverage and take advantage of the opportunity that sits in front of us? So clearly, the demographics of society are changing on a global stage, on a global platform, and really giving us an opportunity to figure out how do we, particularly even in the wholesale space, make certain we find ways to better monetize the reality of purchasing and buying decisions that take place as we take care of our customers, our employees, and the shareholders that represent our company. Clearly, you're used to me sitting at the stage and talking about each one of the technology topics, and I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to do that. But let's take a little different turn today and talk about diversity, belonging, and inclusion. And the importance of this conversation on this day and time as we clearly look at the work that we're doing across blockchain, network security, the differences we're making with fraud, really getting our arms around what's taking advantage of the evolution of the industry. But in order to do that, we look at the microcosm of what makes up the industry and the society that we all work in today. So often we talk about our performance excellence. We put a lot of strength around our accountability and integrity and respect. But this element of social responsibility around the technology that we bring to the table. I just finished reading a book by the Microsoft CEO really talking about hit refresh. And how do we make certain the work that we're doing around technology resonates to the social responsibility that we have as a corporation, as a company. And there are a number of items you talk about when you talk about diversity, whether it's race, age, sexual preference, disabilities, gender imbalance. Every one of these elements is an important element that takes us forward in this particular industry. I so happen to pull some stats from a McKinsey work here, because one of the items that we found that really was an area for the Global Leadership Forum for the first time yesterday, it was to sit down and bring up this conversation about diversity, the uniqueness that each and every one of us bring to the table each and every day, and how do we empower a belonging environment and a culture so that every person's input is heard to take us to a best practice and even a better way to move ourselves forward in the industry. For example, 29% of the global workforce are women. A lot of folks did not know that. 21% of companies that embrace diversity, belonging, and inclusion find that their financial performance is that much higher relative to the return that they drive out of this large global industry. And this last data point, because I don't get a chance to talk about trillions too often, but $12 trillion improvement to the global GDP by 2025 by including everyone in this conversation, particularly the gender imbalance issue that we have in this current environment that we live and work in today. So there's many ways to look at this particular conversation, and the reason we felt it important as we looked at the digital economy, the digital technologies, and making certain we're leveraging that. Whether within your companies or the corporations you represent, we have things like employee resource groups. And those resource groups can go across the board, whether it's gender, race, ethnicity, age, sexual preferences, disabilities, physical abilities. How do we partner across that which makes up the diaspora of who we are as an industry and make certain that every voice matters and every voice makes a difference? Mentor programs. I sat in a session today where we discussed from the Global Women in Information Technology and Telco and really embraced this idea that said, you know, how do we make certain that there's a difference? One of the ladies beside me was from the Netherlands, and she really spoke. And it really helped me understand each of us may be at different places on this journey, but that's okay. But let's drive awareness to the reality of the power that we have and better leverage that across the technology and the digital economy that we have in front of us. And her point that she discussed was, as a female in the Netherlands, she's typically the only lady sitting in that boardroom discussion. And she talks to her niece, and the conversation was not even thinking about that as far as a job going forward, say in the STEM area of technology, engineering, et cetera. And really understanding how do we train and how do we start caring for generations in middle school, elementary school, and high school, and college to the point where they also are part of this conversation. Supplier diversity. Within Verizon, we spend about $26 billion on suppliers and making certain our suppliers are diverse. Even when they work on our ad campaigns, they must employ a diverse slate of individuals that work on our activity, or we actually do not sign to do business with that company. Supplier diversity, pushing that equation. Leadership and development, similar to my Netherlands story. What are we doing to invest in the balance that we need from a gender standpoint in the decisions that are made, the training? We've taken on an initiative in Verizon called WOW, Women of the World, and really making sure that the leadership is there and the training is there and the development is there, and inviting men to the conversation as we look at the power and influence and who's sitting in those chairs at any given day, making that decision as we evolve down this technology train. Social responsibility, we've added that. Philanthropically, going into the schools now, Verizon uses our innovative labs and work with the students and actually have them do different exercises around blockchain, security, the importance of coding, et cetera. And then lastly, what do we do from an HR standpoint, from a talent management? One of the biggest stats we saw coming from Capacity Media's data is that retaining the talent pool becomes a harder and harder challenge. So what are we doing about that, retention and training and development, so that everyone has a voice in this conversation at the end of the day? Keeping in mind, the strength is leveraging diversity, the strengths that brings into power across the diaspora of the global economy to make certain that everyone feels that they're part of the conversation. And when they're not a part, making certain that you're consciously bringing them in, getting rid of unconscious biases that you have, and create a more inclusive environment. Thus, we can deliver blockchain. We can deliver security. We can transform this industry because every opinion matters and every point can make a difference. Once again, not about basically looking at counting heads as much as making certain each head counts in this technology evolution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take a seat. Fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody, for your presentations. We're now going to have a bit of a conversation about some of the topics that came up probably across several of your presentations, but also maybe some topics that were not so covered. I think one thing I noticed there was, if I look from the outside, one of the biggest trends I would see is hyperscalers, and let's call it the disruption, the innovation they're bringing to the industry. Now, I think it's only Dave in your presentation that you used the word hyperscalers. They're obviously changing the industry dynamics. Maybe, Keri, let's start with you. How can let's call it the more traditional carrier community really build a value proposition that creates sustainable value for carriers as the hyperscalers continue to grow, continue to invest?
So I think the question was around how the traditional wholesalers or traditional service providers can be a part of the equation with the hyperscales and actually add some value. And I think there's a couple ways that can happen. I mean, obviously, they have a lot of intelligence in regard to technology, and they're not hindered with the brownfield scenarios that the rest of us are when we look across the industry. But what they lack is actually regulatory understanding in a lot of ways. So as we start to look at GDPR and the different data protection laws that are coming out there, obviously very present in Europe at this point in time, starting to propagate into California and other parts of the United States, I think that this data protection element is critical. The industry, the wholesale industry, has lived in that regulatory environment for a very long time. So one of the value adds that we can bring to the equation is actually that understanding of how to interact, how to engage, and how to actually help them be successful.
Okay, so helping them in the regulatory understanding. I mean, Juan Carlos, would that be your view as well? Is the value around regulatory education, or what more can carriers bring to the table here to create value?
Well, of course, I think that every company has to be measured with the same rules. Then in that sense, I think that the regulation should come to also to the hyperscalers or remove barriers in our business. But I think that to put another point of view on that, I think that along the last years, I mean, and the last years, we have been in a, I would say, in a fighting, I mean, with the hyperscalers. And I think the hyperscalers are key actors, I mean, on the evolution of the industry. I mean, in the last years, I mean, providing contents, providing user experience. Then I think that this is something that we have to recognize. And probably what we have not found, I mean, along the years, is the proper model of relationship, because we were discussing if what is more important, I mean, the content or the user. And I think that probably we need to go and step forward on that to find, I mean, services that can be useful for the hyperscaler and also for the user. And in that sense, I think, for me, I mean, edge computing, for instance, I mean, is one of the key challenges and the key drivers in the future model of relationship with the hyperscaler, because it brings the opportunity to the hyperscaler to get something that they cannot get by their own, and also to the carriers we can offer the hyperscaler a real value added for the new services of the future. And I think it's true that the regulation should be the same rules, but I think that we have to find also different models based on new services and new technologies to get a good relationship with these guys.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. Then maybe let me take same question to both Emmanuel and Mauro, but around, you're part of integrated carriers. You have consumer business units, you have enterprise units, you have wholesale units. And what we were talking about on stage earlier is, you know, a single company can be your customer, your competitor, your supplier, your partner. How do you work through this? Because often the tension, right, in wholesale is we want to serve these customers, but sometimes your other business units can be a bit defensive because it's more direct competition. So how, from a Telecom Italia perspective and an Orange perspective, are you looking at that dynamic with the hyperscalers?
Thank you so much. Very, very interesting question, Sam. And well, different perspective. You know, if you look at the retail side of the equation, the telco missed an opportunities during the last 10 years in try to compete, try to blame, try to say the over the top, no? And fight on the regulation side, the level playing field kind of things. If you look on the wholesale side, I think that we have an advantage of try to collaborate more than the retail side of the equation used to do. So we have this competitive advantage as wholesaler, and I think that now in this new cycle, 10-year cycle and more, where security is more important, trustability more important, regulation and privacy are more important, I think that the dialogue with the hyperscale, it's, I don't want to say facilitated, but at least on our side, it's happening really with a lot of mutual respect. So we can bring proximity, which is a value. We can bring trust, which is a value. We can bring go-to-market, which means, as I told you before, proximity to the customer. And if we learn to be more agile and really faster than we used to be as telco, we have this important chance to collaborate and growing the overall pie rather than fight against one and the other. The challenge is more on the retail side of the telcos, but also there, I think that on specific topics, you see content, for instance, is important, and as I told at the beginning, also security and the necessity to have data inside a specific country, so GDPR, for instance, it's something that more and more links together hyperscales and telcos.
Emmanuel, what's your view?
Well, I would say from a retail perspective, what we really need to work together on the best way to deliver the content with the best quality to our end customers, and this is really an area where we work together in order to find the best ways to bring the content to the customers, in particular in areas like Africa, where we're quite present, and this is a common concern is to be able to bring the content to the African customers. And then, of course, hyperscalers, they have huge needs in terms of connectivity, and they build some part of it, but they also buy quite a lot. So they are customers for us, and they are as well partners, because when they build, very often they're keen on working with us on some projects. So I can take the example of the Union Cable across the Atlantic with Google. So that's we have this very complex relation between them being providers of content, we are providing of network, and also building together some capacities.
And Rolf, staying with the hypercarriers theme, we're hearing here individually, carrier by carrier, we're making decisions about how we engage. But at an industry level, and you refer back to GLF meeting yesterday, is enough done at a carrier industry to hyperscaler industry interface where we really deal with the key issues that are facing all carriers? Or do you think the dialogue should just remain, it's individual carrier by carrier?
From my perspective, the first step is, of course, that each and every carrier has a very healthy relationship to hyperscalers. Of course, they are the main drivers of data growth in all of our networks, which on the retail side is good. They're providing content. On the technology side, it's a challenge because we need to upscale our networks really year by year. On the wholesale side, of course, there are a lot of opportunities to provide also your connectivity. In this context, we are talking here when we discuss with them, we talk about huge capacity, 100 gig, 400 gig, sometimes we even discuss 1 tera. I think these are still discussions that we have to do on a really carrier basis. I don't see here in this context really an alliance of carriers where we are going for that. Of course, when we look deeper into the technology that hyperscalers are driving, which are very much linked to SDNs, because hyperscalers are looking for bandwidth on demand to also connect their data centers. Here we come back to what we also discussed, how do we create our interfaces in the industry to really become faster in scaling up the networks, have easy interfaces and capacity on demand behind that.
Very good. And Dave, you talked about the importance of a new era of collaboration. Where do you think maybe are sort of the 2 or 3 topics where that collaboration with hyperscalers needs to happen so that we're not sat up here in 3 years going, well, that was another missed opportunity?
Great question. I mean, I think, for me, it echoes that thing about speed. I think, if we exclude that community, and as Ralph said, I mean, that's driving a lot of the growth. I mean, our wholesale business only exists to support, ultimately, growth driven by retail customers. I think we forget that sometimes. They're driving the scale in our industry. I think if we are on the receiving end of requirements, it's very hard for us to react. The scale that the hyperscalers want to work at typically involves longer development cycles. It involves a long time for us to deliver things. So I think bringing the hyperscalers into the tent rather than being outside the tent, which I think there's a tendency to try and think of them as being something outside is one of the big challenges. So I think bringing them in so we can get ahead of planning, work with them about their requirements, we can help meet their requirements, and that individually then helps us build our own specific value propositions. Because I think some of the reason we get afraid of hyperscalers is because they're not prepared to wait for us to deliver the solutions. It's our responsibility to find the things that they need from us.
So then tying two themes together, Eric, so delivering new solutions, we've heard a lot about the innovations of carriers this morning. You touched on the importance of diversity, acquiring, retaining talent. Now, one of the challenges this industry has, and it links into that acquiring and retaining talent statistic, is the hyperscalers are attractive for good talent. What can we do as an industry here to really encourage wholesale and international carriers to be a destination of choice for talent?
No, excellent question. So within Verizon, I look at this so much from this term I use, Sam, more of a co-opetition. And how do we coexist in this ecosystem at the end of the day? Because clearly we can sit in the wholesale space and see price compression, alternative providers coming in to the space, whether it's the cable companies or fiber companies. But how do we get ourselves back to a growth and a sustainable growth standpoint? So we embrace the idea of the hyperscalers, web scales, that whole FANG body from Facebook to Google to Netflix, Amazon, candidly, Apple, Microsoft. We pull all of that in because to me, that's where the growth opportunities are for us to partner together. And being about the network and connectivity at the end of the day, from a technology standpoint, and clearly a number of my peers spoke to this, it's an opportunity for us to sell even more margin-rich products and services. For example, whether I'm selling lit fiber or dark fiber to their data centers, I think as Rolf brought to the table. How do we look at things like professional services and security? Those incremental revenue streams that we may not have historically monetized with some of the traditional, quote unquote, wholesale carriers. So I take that data point and kind of segue to your specific point about, how do we attract and keep and retain talent around this? One, we just see the change in the pool of the employee base we have. As we talk about diversity and a feeling of belonging and kind of inclusion, the whole idea is, what do we do to attract the millennial population? Or how do we retrain and repurpose folks that have been on the job for 20 years or 25 years so that they understand that, hey, the background you've had in the past, we can leverage that and build from it, but going forward, how do I train and develop you so that you can take advantage of those opportunities and be able to have the conversation with the hyperscalers selling our products and services so that we become just as attractive in our carrier world. We do it with our internship program. We bring folks in all the time in that space, and it forces us to make sure we're ready now, can leverage those opportunities such that whether they get employed at a FANG company or they get employed at a Verizon inter-carrier service provider company, we think that the ecosystem can coexist just like we do providing services in this wholesale environment, which, by the way, I don't know about your company, it's the most profitable services because we're low touch, scale, and volume, more automation, API tools, et cetera. So therefore, it's a greater proposition if our firms look at the reality of how do you optimize and maximize each distribution channel in your firm. And oh, by the way, the EBITDA margins in wholesale are better than anything I've seen in retail. Fair enough?
Very good. I'll put you on the optimistic end of the spectrum. Fantastic. Keri, you spoke about the network of tomorrow. When you look at this at COLT, what are the new capabilities that you're seeing that you really need to invest in within your organization to be ready to serve customers?
So I think and it was one of the topics that was touched on here. There's many different elements that we have to invest in, but one of them, I think somebody said, it was the back office becoming the front office. And I think that's very true. We have to invest in automation because the reality is, as the bandwidth gets bigger, the price for that, thanks to the hyperscalers, is coming down. And so we have to adjust our back office in order to enable that automation to benefit not just our interaction with those customers, but also our statements, our actual financial statements. I mean, we have to be better and more efficient about how we're interacting. So APIs are really important. Blockchain is really important. So obviously, we're a key member in trying to drive blockchain across the environment, and ensuring that we're actually listening to the customer's needs when we're building that automation. So preparing the insights and using machine learning and AI in order to enable that insight to be had.
Okay, and then so moving from a capabilities perspective in this transformation to investors. So Juan Carlos, how does this industry, or how should this industry best tell the story to investors? And then do you think the markets are fairly rewarding wholesalers for this transition that they're going through, looking for new business above purely the network and connectivity?
Well, I think that to get the word of the market, I mean, we need to invest in new services. I mean, we need to sophisticate more our services. I mean, to invest in value-added approach features on our services and also in digital services. I think that we need to evolve from the traditional wholesale services based on simple volumes. That were the key words, I mean, in the traditional wholesale, to services, I mean, more use case based. I mean, I can tell you an example on that. We are working in Telefónica, we are working in the messaging platform in RCS. I think that's the same than most of the rest of the carriers. But we are not investing in platforms itself. I mean, we're investing in use cases. Because if you want to approach to the market and get a return and margins and profitability, you need to provide, I mean, services that are very near to the final users. And this is, you have to understand, I mean, the real needs of every customer, and you have to adapt the services to their needs. And I think that today the technology is facilitating this transformation. And definitively, I think that we need to invest in services and value-added services and digital services.
Very good. I'm worried that we're running towards lunchtime, so probably two questions. A first question for this end of the panel, and then a question for all of you. So for this end of the panel, if you can sort of fairly succinctly say, what is the one issue, and I'll caveat work-related, that keeps you awake at night? Which is the one that is the sort of the bug on your back that you are concerned about as a leader of your organization?
I'll jump in that we move fast enough and we are agile enough to take advantage of the opportunity so that we disrupt before someone disrupts us. That's what I really push on, to make certain as I talk about monetization and going from a declining wholesale segment to one that is actually thriving and really starting to put good numbers on the board.
I mean, I'd say exactly the same. In fact, you jumped in very quickly and got that. Yeah, the same thing for me. I think we have to react to disruption far more quickly than we do at the moment.
So three things. First is pace. Yeah. Second is talent. And third is digitization.
I would say one thing is customer value, how to be more simple and embrace all the needs of customers and in a single, simple, and very efficient value proposition.
Very quick, we need to spend less capex, so to lower down the cost of our machines, be quicker, and most important thing, engagement of people.
Back office transformation and get talent to approach the customers in a different way.
All of the above. And I would say we have to try harder. I think sometimes we're very accepting of the status quo. So we have an aging industry. We have an industry that is very accepting and sometimes can be complacent. And complacency will kill us if we go forward.
And Sam, I think this whole customer experience transformation is the reality.
Yeah.
Ease of business, use the tools, portals, systems, so it's easy to do business with.
So let me change it. I think that was a bit of a glass half empty question, and it was good to see the glass was only half empty, which is very good. So let's end on that slightly optimistic note, and I'm going to make it more difficult for Eric. Eric's going to go last this time. What is the one thing as a leader of your organization you are most excited about that you think you can really deliver over the next 12 months, so that if we replay this panel at Capacity Europe 2020, you're saying, this is what we did? Keri, maybe you can go first.
So I know you asked for one thing, but I'm going to give you two. One is blockchain, because I do believe that the ecosystem is absolutely important, and our ability to be successful as an industry going forward with the hyperscalers and with all of the different members of the community that are coming in, we have to work together. And blockchain gives us one opportunity with the JLF in particular in order to enable that. The other one that I would say is we talked about diversity and we talked about skills. And I think the skills are equally as important as the technology as we go forward. I talked about trying harder. At COLT, and I have to plug because I'm the only woman up here. So at COLT, we actually did a college program, after college program. And we say we can't get the people and the hyperscalers can, but I completely disagree with that. We had 3,000 kids apply for 60 jobs. We can get the kids, we just have to get them excited about our industry, and our industry is exciting.
Things that are more exciting for me, I think the power of the talent. I think that we have the opportunity, with the proper reskilling and hiring new talents, to trust, in the proposals and in the talent that those people is going to bring to the organization. And the second, more from the technology side, I think that probably not for the next 12 months, probably for the next 24 months, is the edge computing. I think that edge computing is an opportunity for carriers like us. We have the opportunity to create, the ecosystems and the, I would say, interconnection model, for the edge computing of the future. Otherwise, another companies will do.
We are actually in the middle of an important turnaround, and where it's important to prove our capability of igniting new growth. I think that this will be the best thing also to prove to talents that our companies can be really a good place to stay and spend their time.
I would say the transformation going from through automation, through digital, in order to turn our skills and our talents more toward the customer and the customer experience.
What is really exciting me is the value that we as carriers are creating for the global society. How we are supporting the Industry 4.0, how fast we are also improving here, and how important these services are really to develop democracies. So I think we should be very proud of the services that we are providing, because on our backbone, all this transformation of this world is happening.
Thanks, Rolf. I think some of the things that made us sound glass half empty are the things that actually excite me. We have a hugely changing industry, huge opportunity that generates in terms of new customer sets, new drivers of demand. It's our job to work out what the value proposition is and make that compelling. No one else's job. That's what excites me.
Yep. Now you put the pressure on me last, Sam. I would tally it together with my peers here around what I'll call customer experience transformation. Ease of doing business, new products and services, and I think it was Ralph Waldo Emerson who said, continue not to go where the path may lead, but go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. So let's be trailblazers in this industry.
Fantastic. I think that leaves us on I would move from slightly optimistic to fully optimistic note. And thank you everybody for your time this morning, and importantly, thank you to these great leaders of our industry for giving up their time to speak to you. I think it's been a very engaging session to hear their views on what is important going forward. So please join me in thanking them for their time. Thank you very much.